Welcome, Mr. Tucker. I'd just like to explore some of the issues that have defined these two terms. But before we get into specifics, could you tell me how has it been generally?
Well, thank you, Kimo, for interviewing me. How it has been, it's been a hell of a ride, to say the least. You know, Georgetown Chamber of Commerce is not the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce that I took over 2 years ago. It's more than double its size in terms of membership. When I took over, we were in the 300s, and now we are in the 700s. That's what I'm saying, it's been a hell of a ride, and of course, a joy, a pleasure. I had a great team to work with. I've had two presidents before me that have really helped to lay the groundwork, and of course, an excellent executive director, very supportive junior vice president of the chamber, and of course, all in all, a very good team, good counsel, great secretariat staff to work with. Really, everyone, committee members and everybody has just really rise to the challenge and just did what they had to do to get the work done.
Okay, so what would you say is your biggest accomplishment as president of the chamber?
I think to see local content to its fruition, getting when the president, I was standing behind him when he signed the local content legislation into law. And I think I felt that, that was something that we started. It took a long time. We were screaming and shouting at people when they didn't understand it. We had our internal fights within the private sector, within private sector organizations, within our own chamber, on whether or not it is what is right for Guyana. We've debated that. Of course, we have companies that are in the oil and gas industry that are in our membership, and we had to represent them as well. So you're dealing now with companies that want to get into the sector, and then you're dealing with the companies who control the sector. And they thought that local content would slow the sector down.
Okay.
And, for us, we were saying to them, but you're not giving us any opportunities. You're not showing us where the opportunities lie. And we really had to now get local content to open those doors so we can see where the opportunity lies. And, and I'm proud now to say that, we did a review with the Private Sector Commission or Local Content Forum. And, we started with 40 areas. Now you're seeing additionally 25 additional areas being up. Guyanese have capacity to now do 65 things and even more. I think the chamber has identified maybe another 7 or 8 more. So you're looking at about, all in all, 70-something areas, almost doubling the 40 areas that we've recommended. So local content is, I would say, definitely on top of the list of accomplishments. Of course, from being at the chamber, the Business Development Forum was actually something that was actually my idea. But that was when I was the chair of the T&I committee. So that is another, I would say, a bit of pride and joy there, because that was primarily focused on growing businesses. You sit here and people come in and ask questions like, I haven't registered my business because I don't know how to. And then you kind of you realize that, people need help. Businesses need help. Businesses need representation. Businesses need to grow. They need the opportunity to grow. So if you've looked at all of the fights that I've taken on over the years, it's always the fight that will enable a business to grow from one stage to the next.
Now, one of the things that businesses need to grow, and you have advocated for this a lot, is more access to finance. How pronounced would you say is this need for access to finance? And I'll qualify my question. You have been advocating a lot for the commercial banks to provide more access for the businesses, but you haven't been getting the response that you would have wanted. Who was it that first said that the hurdles here are of a legislative or regulatory nature, and why aren't they responding to you with the alacrity that you would have hoped?
So when we first started to advocate on access to finance, it was simply because you have people that have great ideas, or even small businesses that just trying to from one chicken pen to two chicken pens, from one shade house to two shade houses, going through the system and butting up with the same hurdles as a medium-sized business. Then you realize that, look, persons coming to you complaining from the oil and gas sector. Listen, 90 days, 180 days, 240 days, they're waiting for payments. Their cash flow is just done. All their cash is out. The companies are, owing them for these lengthy times. And there's no access to finance to help support them during that period. So we managed to get a meeting with the governor, the Minister of Finance, the Bankers Association, and of course, us, the private sector, GCCI, PSC. In that meeting, we raised all of these issues, and the governor said, but there's nothing in the banking regulations that prohibits the banks from invoice factoring, receivable lending, contract borrowing, or any of those things. There's nothing in the Bank of Guyana regulations that says the banks can't do it. The banks in turn said, but there's legislative blockades that says you can't do that. So we were like, okay, what are they? And we went on, they said they don't want to say. We pressured, minister pressured, and they told us one of it is that only incorporated companies can do something is called debunkering, or I forgot the exact term, but it's where a company as an entity, right, can assign their receivables or assign their assets to a commercial bank. An individual by law can't do it. And most of our businesses in country are sole proprietors. Right. So that comes to also with the other problem the banks. The banks say to you, oh, sole proprietors by law are not required to produce audited financial statements. The banks they only want audited financial statements, so only incorporated entities now can do audited. Incorporated entities is mandated that they have audited financial statements. So that is another hurdle that the banks have put. They're using, but not telling people. Because if you tell me as a sole proprietor that I have to have audited financial statements, I will pay an auditor to do my audit, to audit my financial statements so I can submit it to the bank to have access to for finance. But they're denying you and not telling you that is a requirement. So it went on, and the minister said, listen, how about you, to the banks, he said, how about you give us the whole list of things that, laws that prohibit access to finance? And the bank says yes, and we've been waiting maybe about 9 months now for them to tell us. So at that point, we decided to go to the Attorney General. We went to the Attorney General, and he identified that there is a law that says you can only borrow on immovable assets. So that's in the law. That is one of the laws that have to change. But the bank is saying it's not just one. There are several laws and acts that prohibit certain things. But we're saying, so that's where the animosity and all the different statements and the aggression to the banks are coming from, because they're sitting on information that they're refusing to share to make access to finance easier for the general business community. And that is ridiculous.
Would you say that there's something else that your members could be doing to be able to access finance better? I remember it was the Vice President, Dr. Barjagbio, who said that local businesses need to be more accountable with their finances. Is that the case with your membership, or any other?
Yeah, that's a case across the board. Mm-hmm. Now, people, both the Vice President and the President has said that, right? And I've said to them, well, and I will say no, you look at businesses that are in a position where, they're not having these great profits, so they're on paper, they're not looking that well, but yet they want a big loan. Maybe they have a good proposal, but you're running a business for 30 years and you barely got a little bit of profits. But think about it this way. So there are two issues. One, Business has been running for 30 years, right? It's an incorporated company and there's very small amount of profits. So how does he want to invest in this $1 billion idea? Simply because the taxation system is so high, right? Who wants to pay 40% tax? Accountants are accountants. They will find ways, people will find ways to absorb, raise their expenses and be less profitable than they are. Simply because when you do become highly profitable, you're paying 40% tax. More businesses are sole proprietors versus incorporated entities, right? If I'm importing steel into Guyana and I'm a sole proprietor, my taxes are 20-something%. If I'm an incorporated company and I import steel in Guyana and sell it, my taxes are 40%. What encourages me to move from a sole proprietor to an incorporated entity, right? So the entire tax regime, is something that you need to encourage also. Now there's local content. You need to encourage locals to invest, to come up into their ranks, to go public, incorporate your company, then become a publicly traded company. We need to look at it. We have also approached the Minister of Finance and the government to look at the capital markets. Because you don't have to just only do debt financing through the commercial banks. You can also go to the markets to raise money, which is a cheaper way to raise money. But it comes with its high degree of corporate governance, high degree of, audited financial statements. It's publicly traded. Everything is out there in the public. But let's look at Trinidad and Jamaica. Vibrant junior stock exchange. That's how their small businesses are moving and growing. Their small businesses are actually coming here to invest in Guyana on the same platforms, all right? Simply because they've been able to go to the capital markets and raise money and raise capital. We sat down, funny, we had some Jamaicans here, and I was meeting with 3 different companies, and every time I was meeting with a different company, just 1 or 2 persons would get up from the table. So it's the same investors in all the different companies. And because collectively they're coming together and they're doing this, they've been raising capital on the stock exchange, and they've done so. Trinidad has a very exciting junior stock exchange and stock exchange. They have incentives that if you go public as a small business, small or medium business, you get 5-year tax holiday right? And then after the first 5 years, the second 5 years, you get 50% tax holiday for the second 5 years. So basically you have 10 years of concessions, right? That's what those countries are doing to really grow their small and medium-sized businesses. So that's why we see us so passionate about access to finance.
All right, now let's talk about local content. We're in our 2nd year. We've had legislation for a while. About 500 or more local content certificates have been issued, and the Local Content Secretariat is pursuing 750 this year. The government is doing an assessment of the national skills capacity with the view of amending the schedules in the Local Content Act. What next is there for local content with respect to the work of the government?
With respect to work of the government, there are 2 things. I mean, one, of course, is to look at the regulations. We must relook at the regulations. There's way too many people that found that loophole and are breaching it, right? You basically got to rent a citizen. Now you got to rent a lawyer, right? So you got lawyers that are just blatantly, circumventing the act. But, what's new with lawyers? So in that case, it is important that the regulations are in place to really get deep into those companies and ensure that people are not, foreign companies are not doing rent extraction. Rent extraction will create foreign currency crisis, will reduce the opportunities for locals in terms of, benefiting from the local content. Just a few people will actually be able to get any money of it, and then there's a small percentage. But then, there's so many sub deals and everything when it comes down to these persons who are breaching the local content. that I don't know what is the, I mean, those are very selfish people because they're getting a small percentage of what really is the spend. And by getting, and they're now circumventing an entire lot so that they can get 5-10% for themselves, and then thus depriving an entire industry from growing, from Guyanese building capacity, from Guyanese being able to now do this job, for unbundling the sector, right? Unbundling the sector will grow so many businesses, right? And it's disappointing to see that. So it's important that we work as a private sector organization, that we continue to support government in terms of, the regulations, basically calling out those who have been breaching this act, and allow government, give government the tool and the power, help them to give the tool to go and investigate these things and to correct the wrongs. At no point should we stand by. This is a private sector bill. This is something that the government created to benefit the private sector of Guyana and, of course, Guyanese who are working in the oil and gas industry. We should be supportive, and we should be able to work with the government to ensure that it's being applied properly and benefiting us. And they have my support, 100% support in terms of when it comes to that. And we look forward to the regulations, and we look forward to them looking at the proposed areas that we've identified, the additional areas to the FORTA, because we see Guyanese stepping out, not just doing the simple things that we've identified in the FORTA, the low-hanging fruits. The Guyanese are now investing in pipe coating, vessel services. You're going to things that you said first that, no, Guyanese can't do. We've been able to go and find partners and bring them and get these things done. And mind you, it would not have happened. Those partnerships would not have happened without local content. So it's important that we allow it to grow. We don't want to have it over-regulated, right? But if persons continue to breach the law, then you're going to have to pack regulation on top of regulation on top of regulation to close the loopholes. So at some point, if we as a country or Guyanese don't start to feel pride in growing ourselves and growing our businesses, then we're going to be an over-regulated oil and gas industry.
Okay, one of the issues that it's been said had held businesses back is how long it has taken for the companies controlling the sector to pay the Guyanese businesses. So the local content secretariat decided to place in the company's master plans that they should pay them within 45 days of receiving a correct invoice. Has this been an effective solution? Are you still getting complaints from your membership about late payments?
The complaints for late payments have significantly reduced. They are still, I've gotten a complaint up to yesterday. But, actually, when we sat down with the local content secretariat and discussed it, I actually pointed them to the area in the act, in the second schedule, that they could have used to institute the 45-day plan.
Okay.
Because it's in there, and it was there in very simple words. It was there actually saying that the payment terms must be competitive and growth-oriented. So that's simple. What do you mean? If you listen to the access to finance issues, right? Cash flow. Cash flow helps you to grow your business. Competitive payment terms is a part of growth. So we said, use that. When companies bring their procurement plan, make sure that their procurement plan speaks to the payment terms and how it will help Guyanese businesses. And and I'm happy to see them do it and go down that road. It was very helpful to the business community because there were people out there with, some people were over a year being owed. And, if you really look at Guyana, you'll see that the major spenders in the country are the oil and gas sector and government spending. And both of them take a while to pay.
Okay.
So it tells you that you really got to be able to access the finance is key, and of course, be able to force their hands in terms of getting your payments early for the business community, or you're going to have a cash flow crisis in the country.
Now, one of the prevailing issues that has held itself over the oil and gas sector is advocacy for the Stabroek Block production sharing agreement to be renegotiated. Last year in August, you said, in the context of this question of renegotiation, that the Georgetown Chamber is always going to advocate for sanctity of contracts. I mean, that's important for all business. But the president and the vice president said that Guyanese businesses need to do more to speak up to protect the business that they're benefiting from under this agreement. Do you agree with them that local businesses may need to speak up more?
You know, businesses are benefiting from it. There's no two ways about it. Whether it's a good contract or a bad contract, the fact of the matter, we put local content in place to ensure that a great amount of business stay. More we build capacity, the wider we take local content, the more of the spend remains. At the end of the day, if the industry is building capacity, building industry in country, right, money remains here. Majority of the spend will remain here. The profits, of course, will go. So we have to be able to look at it in terms of its, in a holistic approach. That look, if only a little bit is remaining here in terms of art, so profits are coming, and a little bit of business is being done here, and majority of the business is being done outside of our borders, then we're losing. If we build capacity and capture most of the services, goods and services in country, our workers, our PAYE, our taxes, everything for our businesses, we don't have tax exemption. The company that owns the thing has tax exemptions. Right down to the suppliers, we pay the taxes, we pay the duties, we pay everything. So it's important to look at how it's benefiting the country in a holistic approach in terms of, without the oil and gas industry, all these hotels would not have been being built. All of the infrastructure would not have been needed. So many things everything would remain the same. So if I'm going to answer the question in terms of the contract, yeah, the private sector should speak out and says, listen, at no point in time when we sign a contract, because Exxon is a member of the chamber, right? Banks, DIH, all these other companies are members of the chamber. When they sign a contract with government, I wouldn't expect government, and they're profitable, I wouldn't expect government to go and renege on that contract, right? I wouldn't want that for myself. I'm sure all the people that have invested in Guyana, so think about it. Let's just take, for instance, a newspaper. That newspaper would have invested in Guyana. So that businessman would have invested in Guyana 30 years ago, when there was maybe 1,000 people that can actually buy a paper. Right. Now that Guyana, education level is higher, more people in the country, more businesses in the country, and that now entity has greater access to a bigger circulation, a wider circulation. Should that entity pay more for their registration on their taxes because they're now more profitable? Maybe we should renegotiate our incorporated act and everything else. So the terms and conditions for everything probably needs to change. We have to see how this affects us. If an investor cannot come in here with confidence and say, look, I signed my agreement, I'm investing in your country, this is what we agree on, stick to your word. Everybody knows in business, your word is your bond. Right. You cannot, you don't give your word and because somebody, that's a low life mentality. And we cannot do business as two-bit hustlers. We have to do business as a business community. You have to be able to do business as a country that says to you, look, we are here to do business. We're legitimate. We're not drug smuggling, money laundering, people trafficking country. We are the fastest growing economy in the world. We are a country that is growing, building capacity. We are an oil-producing nation. We are a gold-producing nation. We are potentially agriculture hub for the Caribbean. We must be able to sign contracts. We must be able to be obligated to international law. We must be able to say, look, our word is our bond. This is what you see is what you get. Not when it becomes profitable, we suddenly change. That is what GCCI has an agriculture committee that is going out right now in all the regions and teaching farmers exactly that, right? contractual obligations, right? If I say to you, grow me 100 pounds of pepper and I'm paying you $300 a pound, not next week you can come to me and say, boss, pepper price high everywhere else and you're going to pay me 400.
Right.
No, I've committed to you, whether it's $10 or whether it's $500, I'll pay you $300. That's the contractual obligation between agro processor and farmer. If we encourage our people not to obey and not to stand to things that they sign on and committed to, then we're going to be going to a terrible place. It's better you leave the oil in the ground and everything else.
All right. You're leaving office. Your advice to the person who's going to take over?
My advice is, and I've actually been saying it, my advice is that, the private sector is filled with, innovative people, resilient people, and of course it's also filled with people who don't have the best intentions. And you must surround yourself with good people, people that will question your leadership, but not try to undermine your leadership. And so I would say to the new president, do not surround yourself with yes men, right? Make sure that you have people around you that will guide you and give you constructive criticism, because that is the only way you can grow and only way you can grow the chamber. Not everything that I've done, I wanted to do, right? Not everything that I wanted to do was done. So in both cases, everything was, you had challenges, you had people that were against people. You have to be able to lay your case out, represent your membership, ensure that you stick to principled positions and do not be swayed by persons who tend to influence you for the wrong motives. We are a private sector organization. We are biased when it comes to business.
Right.
We have no political intentions. Anything that affects business, we will speak on, once we think it's going to affect business. And we will hold a pro-business approach. We will always hold a pro-business approach. That is our mandate. That's what we have to do. It may not be what the general public like. It may not be what government likes. But at the end of the day, it's what we have to do.
Okay, Timothy Tucker, congratulations on 2 successful terms as president of the chamber, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.